How you doing, everybody? Sorry for the slight delay by a few minutes, but we are here to recap our week one bets and to get going with our NFL week two best bet spreads and props. Welcome to the Fantasy Six Pack NFL Betting Show. I'm your host, Actively Lazy 85. Today, I'm going to give you the NFL week two best bets. We'll go over the NFL spreads, over unders. And once again, I don't have props for this week, but I am going to substitute the props with Thursday night football. Again, I like to wait a couple weeks before I start diving into prop bets just to kind of see how people are using players. Case in point, Drake London, somebody that you probably had in your fantasy lineups and things like that, only got one target last week. So I try to give it a couple weeks so I can see how people are being used before I start diving into props. I am currently participating in the 2023 Westgate SuperContest. So I will update you guys on my week one Super Contest, as well as my Facebook group contest and the MyBookie.ag sportsbook website contest as well. Don't forget, you can get access to my betting or to more betting advice, along with our award-winning rankings, custom advice on Discord, and more. Use the promo code F6P NFL for 10% off all available options. I did that so much better last week. But that's also a good way to plug in how getting ahead of things early will make you more money or save you more money. In this case, last week that was 15%. This week is 10%. In 2 weeks, I'm going to start charging a premium. That's a joke. So let's roll into our recap here. And I'm going to just kind of go over the week one trends that happened and then jump into my recap. So trends from week one, 8 teams received over 70% of the bets on the spread. So there were 8 heavy public teams last week. Out of those 8 teams, they went 3-5 against the spread. So fading the public would still be profitable if that is your angle. The 2 most popular bets for the public last week were the Jaguars minus 4.5 against the Colts, who were starting rookie Anthony Richardson in his first start. Remember, I told everybody last week, week one, overall number one picks and rookies in general starting at the QB position were going to struggle a little bit, and that's what happened. But Jags minus 4.5, and then the Eagles minus 3.5 traveling to New England were the 2 most popular bets last week. Both of them covered. So there's that. Road teams last week were an amazing 12-4 against the spread, 10-5 straight up, and 3 of those outright dogs ended up winning. That was the Raiders, money line, Dolphins, money line, Rams, surprisingly, money line. Now, I will say that the Rams actually covering was not as surprising, but the way that they won and the fashion that they did was, I think, definitely one of the biggest surprises of the week. The under, for the folks who like to bet the totals, the under was 12-4 last week, including last night's game that went under, which I think everybody anticipated once Aaron Rodgers went down. I had the under before he went down. But again, once you lose your starting quarterback, things kind of go left. And unfortunately for Aaron Rodgers, it sounds like his season might be done, which is why he's not, or the Jets are not in my betting capping this week. So let me recap my week one. And I got a lot of notes here, so excuse me while I shuffle around. I apologize for that if you can hear it. So Westgate, which is the official Las Vegas contest that I am in, I went 5-0 in the Westgate contest. I could not get the Lions plus 6.5, which was one of my favorite plays last week, which was one of the bets that I gave out in the betting group on Discord, and one of the bets that I highlighted on the ESPN Inside Drive radio show. I couldn't get that number when I tried at Westgate, which is fine. It's understandable. Would have been nice, but I didn't want to take at the time when the Westgate lines came out, it was like 4, and I'd already gotten in at 6. I didn't feel like it was worth the risk of being greedy on the official contest since I was 2.5 points less. So I substituted that with the Titans. So the Titans +3 was my first Westgate bet. And honestly, that was a wild game. I don't think anybody would ever predict that a coach would kick a field goal down 4 with about 2.5, close to 3 minutes left in the game. The odds are more than likely you're not going to get the ball back, and it doesn't win you the game. It's kind of a waste. Not to mention, it wasn't like it was fourth and like forever. It's like 4th and 5, 4th and 6. If that, I think they were actually near the goal line too. It might have been 4th and goal from the 6-yard line. But either way, thank you, Mike Vrabel, for doing that, but it made no sense. The Packers +1, the game I highlighted, saying that I didn't think that the Bears should be favored against anybody this season, and then the Packers proved that right. Just absolutely dominated them from start to finish. Raiders +3.5. Slight sweat on this game, but Jimmy G did what he usually does, which is cover. Not sure. I mean, some people will say it's lucky. I don't know if we can count the totality of a game as luck, in the sense that I can't predict that they're going to miss the field goal. I can't predict that there'll be a big 15-yard penalty that puts the Raiders in a position to finally go ahead with the touchdown. I couldn't predict that Jacoby with Myers would just go off like he did. So all that said, I capped that game as two divisional opponents that typically play tight games. Raiders having covered both times, I think, last year. And then having week 1, Jimmy G coming in against a team that was missing their best receiver and in a new system. That's how I capped it. Dolphins +3 on the Westgate contest. Dolphins, crazy game. Don't understand how Tyreek Hill kept getting open behind everybody. But I am thankful that Tua went off. I think he threw for like 470 yards. Simply amazing. Eagles -3.5. Self-explanatory. Just fading Mac Jones, who is now 0-8 against the spread since last year. They're just not a good team, the Patriots. I just don't think they have the athleticism to compete with teams like the Eagles. And again, proven right, but that game also was quite a sweat that could have went either way as far as the spread goes. Rolling into the high roller contest that I do with my friends over at IBN. The high roller contest is a little bit like the Westgate contest in the sense that once the line is set, that's the line. However, we don't get to pick the games that we bet on in the sense of the competition. The commissioner will pick randomly 5 games, and then we have to cap those 5 games. I like to participate in the contest because it kind of makes me have to branch out. It takes you out of your comfort zone because you can't pick the 5 games. So on that high roller contest, I had the Browns +2, a play that I gave out as a money line play on the radio, on my Twitter, in the Discord group. I was all over the Browns. Even before I knew the history of Burrow versus the Browns, I was on the Browns just because of how they dominate the line of scrimmage. Dolphins +3, self-explanatory from the Westgate contest. Titans +3, explanatory from the Westgate contest. Raiders +3.5, again, from that contest out in Westgate, same thing. And then we've got the Niners -2.5, favorite in Pittsburgh. When I did this podcast, if not this one, there was another one that I did. I was hesitant on the Niners because we start slow, but when I do some of my early capping, like weeks 1 through 4, I have to take into consideration that I have future bets out there. I have said things like in the case of the Jets versus the Bills last night, I thought that the Jets could win the division. So in order for the Jets to win the division, they have to split with the Bills. I had the Jets win total over 9.5. The Bills were at 10. If I have them winning the division, that means they have to get 11 wins. That means they got to split this game. So I took the Jets money line because I'm like, I've already looked at this team and said to myself, they are an 11-win team. They have to win this game. And if they don't win this game, then I know that 1, I need to hedge my future. And then 2, they're not as good as I thought they were. And so Obviously, injury aside, they're not going to win 11 games with Zach Wilson as the quarterback, but that's part of what I use to help make my decisions on some of these games that are really tight. You have to go with what you know, and especially if you looked at preseason, or especially if you have expectations for a team to reach a certain win total, there's going to be times in the schedule where they're going to have to put up or shut up, and you need to make sure as the gambler that you're aware of those situations and what you've previously said back in mid-August or back when you put your futures in. So Niners paid out for me. I'm a Niners fan. Again, nothing against doubting my team per se. Just historically, we don't start off that great. And I do have the Steelers rated pretty high, have them actually over 8.5 wins. But that particular game, I said to myself that, win or lose, that's not going to change how I feel about the Steelers. It was an opportunity for them to step up. They didn't. And when we get further into this particular week, I will explain to you what I took away from a game like the Steelers and Niners. Then the MyBookie contest, again, some of the same games, Raiders, Eagles, Falcons. I've already talked about those. Oh, actually, I didn't talk about the Falcons. Sorry. Falcons favored by 3.5. I took them going against the number one overall pick. I gave you guys the stats on how bad they usually do in their first game. Was looking a little shaky. I am not a fan of Arthur Smith. I have a great rant about Arthur Smith yesterday on the NFL recap show that I did for IBN. There is something about having playmakers and not being able to use them that irks my soul. Not only as a gambler, but as a football lover. Like I feel like if you're an offensive coordinator and you've been promoted to head coach, there should never be a situation where you have 3 playmakers and you can't get them the ball. Bijan only had 10 carries and 6 catches. Okay, you don't really want to use them that much, but why would you, do what you did in the draft and trade up for him if you're not, or take him in a position where, most people would fade a running back. Like, you seem invested in it, so why wouldn't he get more touches? He's a playmaker. I mean, the limited touches he got showed that he could definitely change the game. And I understand you got Algier. He's a good running back, but still, what did you get Bijan for if you're not going to really use him? Fast forward, Kyle Pitts only had, I think, 3 targets. Don't understand that. And then Drake London, as I explained in the beginning of the show, is the poster child for why I don't like to do prop bets early in the season. If before the game started, if you'd have told me Drake London had 0 catches, I would have said, man, JC was on him all game. JC actually got hurt around like the second quarter, and then he only had 1 target. Like, how does that happen? Your wide receiver 1 only has 1 target after the cornerback, the best cornerback on the team, goes down. Like, that makes no sense. The game plan made no sense. I think that the Falcons got lucky that they were playing a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young. And with that being said, next week I got him on my ticket because that's just how gambling is sometimes. Just situational bet. But I am going to be watching them for sure because that's a big deal to me. Like, the Falcons are a team that a lot of people thought could sneak into the playoffs because they have one of the weakest schedules in the league, if not the weakest schedule in the league. But if you're not going to effectively use your players, you're going to have issues. All right, so that's the recap. If you're looking at it through 15 picks in 3 contests, 5 apiece, I went 14-1. Absolutely incredible. The wildest win was a bet that I didn't even put in my contest. Jets money line last night. Shout out to the Fantasy Six Pack Discord betting group for being great supporters because I didn't have that kind of love from my friends or people who tailed me on that bet. Don't get it twisted. It was a sweat over here as well. But that's one thing that I try to make sure I let people know. If I'm giving you advice or if I'm saying bet this, I put money on that bet as well. So if you lose, I lose, and I don't want to lose. So thank you, Fantasy Six Pack Discord, for not dumping on me, and then also for celebrating with me because, well, it was a wild game. Heading into this week, week 2, I don't know if we could think of any trends that might pop out in week 2. except for the trend that I'm going to tell, which is how well teams do in bounce back spots. So if you guys are listening, or if the people who come in and out, if you don't listen to anything else I say, this is very, very important. This could make or break your week 2. Teams that lose by 10 points or more in week 1 have covered 62.9% in week 2. The public loves to fade teams that just got blown out. However, in reality, as you can hear, 62.9% of the time, which is pretty significant, these teams bounce back and cover. That's pretty much across the board, especially in week 1. So the Giants got beat 40-0. You would expect them to bounce back. I don't have them on my card because of some things that I saw in that game that make me not want to bet them. But I'll explain that at the end of the show. But you have to keep in mind, there's a couple of teams that fit this bill, probably like 5 or 6 teams that fit this bill where they got, quote, unquote, blown out week 1, and now they're going into week 2 with some points that they probably shouldn't be getting. So the market hasn't overcorrected just yet. I checked some of the early lines, and I've got the 5 plays that I kind of like right now. And I say kind of because the lines change. Case in point, I got the Cowboys -3.5 probably within the first 5 minutes of the Jets, saying that Aaron Rodgers may not come back to the game. Just took a risk on the Giants -3.5. By the end of the game, it was announced he was virtually done for the season, and now that line is at 7.5. So sometimes it does pay to get ahead of it early, especially if you get something like that where it's a star player and you can, without a shadow of doubt, predict that he won't play the next game. But anyway, do not run from teams that got blown out last week. So I'm telling you again, do not run from that. 62.9% of the time they cover. Take the chance. Take the chance. Over 50% of the time, those teams outright win. Dating back to last year, there were 6 teams last year that got blown out by definition of 10 or more points in week 1, and they all covered 6-0 covered in week 2. So don't be afraid of that. I still use my strategy of 3 dogs, 2 favorites. I'm not going to come off of that for most of the year. You guys will see that whenever I do my 5 picks, it'll probably be 3 dogs and 2 favorites. For the substitute for the prop, I'm going to use the Thursday night football game because I feel like there's some value here in the Thursday night football game. So I will start with capping that game here. So Thursday night, we've got the Vikings at the Eagles. Eagles favored by 7 as of the start of this chat. The over-under is at 48.5. Eagles, the line opened at 7.5, and I jumped on the 7.5, but now it's down to 7. It may teeter down to 6.5. I'm not sure. It's one of those things where the books are looking for a certain amount of money to come in on the team to kind of change the line to encourage the public to bet them. I feel like the public is more than likely going to jump on the Eagles because the Vikings just lost to the Bucks. Also, working, if you're a Vikings backer like myself, working in your favor is last year when the Vikings came into Philly, they got dominated 24-7. It could have been a lot worse than what the score actually said. And that was on a Monday night. And then there's the history of Kirk Cousins as a primetime quarterback. Everybody knows it. I'm one of the folks that are not as high on the fade Kirk Cousins in the primetime spot. I think the number has to be right. You have to also take into consideration a lot of those primetime losses that Kirk Cousins had came against better teams like the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers. And when he was in Washington, the Cowboys, Eagles, Giants, pretty much everybody in the division, because they just have tough divisional games in NFC East, unless the Giants are playing the Cowboys. So, and I'm sorry to go back and I'm just looking at my notes. I made a sin, and I don't like doing this. So let me go back. I also picked the Giants plus 3.5, and that was on this show. I never run away from losses. That is by far a terrible call on my part. I wanted to substitute that Giants play with the Browns in the MyBookie contest and never got back to it. And in my head said, whatever, I'll let it ride. I was hot. I was 14-0 in contest picks at that time. I've never seen a team get beat like that in the NFL, man. I swear to you, I've never seen it, to the point where I turned the game off 2 plays into the second half. So I will definitely hold that L as a Giants backer week 1. And I can't apologize for it because I couldn't foresee a 40-point loss, but I will hold myself accountable for that. That was an awful, awful play and by far the worst loss. So fast forward, Vikings, Eagles. I'm backing the Vikings to bounce back here. I think there's some data out there, some advanced data, like some guys on Twitter who work for PFF and the Athletic. They like to have like these stats where they take into consideration a team's actual stats, passing yards, total yards, defense, etc., and they give you a projected score of what the game should have been if all things were equal, as far as, no turnovers and etc. And the Vikings should have beat the Bucs. I mean, you look at the box score, you look at the game, you're still trying to figure out how did they lose. The Eagles were good enough, but I can't let go of the fact they were up 16-0, and the Patriots came back, and then they were competitive when they came back. And then when it came time to close the game, the offense couldn't really get it done, which is not like what we saw last year, and kind of the red flag I was expecting with Steichen leaving. I don't really like the way the Eagles offense is looking. In game 1, in preseason, when they were running like a loose version of it, and just in general, like the way they attack teams, it wasn't good enough for me. Last year, the Eagles were 3-4 against the spread in games where they were giving up 7 or more points. The game last year with the Vikings, they were only favored by 2.5. They blew the Vikings out. The Vikings were dogs over 3.5 one time last year. That was on the road in Buffalo. The Justin Jefferson crazy catch and outright win by the Vikings at that time. I think this is a similar spot. Not looking for an outright win, but I think that this is just 3 or 4 too many points to give to a team that's typically a favorite, So it's one of those questions. If you're looking at this line, do you think the Eagles are a touchdown better than the Vikings? I don't know. So I'm going with the Vikings. The over under 48.5. The unders were 12-4. We don't usually get Thursday night shootouts anymore, especially early in the season too. I would lean to the under here. That's not going to be a favorite play of mine to do it over on a Thursday night game. But again, I'm taking the Vikings here +7. The next game, I substituted this because I couldn't get the Cowboys -3.5, unfortunately, because the contest, the MyBookie contest didn't change the line. I do have them at 3.5 on there, but like Westgate and everybody else, they're giving me 7.5. So I had to take the Cowboys out, and I put the Chiefs in this position, just anticipating that that Travis Kelce will play. I really think if he could have put some weight on his leg last week, he would have played. And I feel like the Chiefs, man, all those drops and stuff, that'll get cleaned up. The Jags, we know who they are. They're a good team, but they still can't get out of their own way. They're one of the teams that were also fortunate that they played Anthony Richardson, a rookie, in the first game. And I just think that we don't get lines with the Chiefs this low often. And I don't know, even if Kelce isn't playing, I still think it should be like 3.5, but I'll take 3. I'll lay 3 with the Chiefs on the road after losing that first game. They have a lot of Golden State Warrior in them, where if they have a quote unquote bad game, they usually bounce back easily. Jones is back this week. Should be a big boost for that defense, which actually played good without him in there. The secondary was aggressive. They handled a lot of the route combinations that the Lions were doing, a lot of the rub routes and stuff. They were attached to people. I think the one play that they had a hiccup was when St. Brown scored the first touchdown. But outside of that, I thought they did great. They did great against the run. So I'm actually happy with how the defense played, and I thought that would be a weak point for the Chiefs. And then I'm expecting the Chiefs to come out and do better on offense. And who knows Doug Peterson better than Andy Reid? Come on. He practically taught him. So I am all over the Chiefs here. I love the play. I think it's still at 3 as we speak. I fully expect this to go up to like 3.5 or even 4 if Kelsey is officially confirmed to play. But I think you can anticipate that he'll play. Keep an eye on his practice schedule. That's one of the strategies I use. So I'll start looking on Twitter, see if he practiced today, see if he did walkthroughs by Friday. If the guy isn't doing walkthroughs by Friday or hasn't put any real weight on his leg, they'll generally report it. You'll know, and you can switch it out accordingly. The next game on my list, Seahawks plus 5.5. Over under is 49. You know what? I got in on this at 6. It was one of my favorite plays this week. It is the game that I highlighted for that stat of teams that lose by 10 points or more in week 1, covering 63% of the time in week 2. I think the Seahawks are a perfect situational play here. I do know they have some injury concerns. I checked in on that. Both tackles were hurt, and then Lockett also went out with potential concussion. Pete Carroll said Lockett should be good to go. He cleared the test. There was no issues. Said that Cross like jammed his toe or something, so he should be good to go. And then the other tackle, he said, was having a knee issue, which they had already like dealt with in preseason. So he may or may not go. Jason Peters is working out for them. It's not the best option, but it could be worse. And so I think they're healthy enough to get this done. If not the cover, I also took a Hail Mary on the Seahawks to win outright at plus 220. Nothing against the Lions, but this is uncharted territory for them. They just had an amazing win against the Chiefs. They're coming back home. They're favored to win the division. It just seems too good to be true. And you know, we don't talk about letdown spots in the NFL as much as we do in college football. But if there was ever a definition of a potential letdown spot, I think it would be this. One of the things, too, that I think will also be exploited is how the Seahawks know Jared Goff. They know him really well. And they know his tendencies, and they also know his limitations. And one of those limitations, I think, is, you know, he won't throw the ball if it's not a perfect look. Like if it's not a perfect window, you don't see a lot of tight throws and things like that. And so I feel like the Seahawks are going to come up with a game plan to make him have to beat them passing. And I think they've got the secondary, believe it or not, I think they've got the secondary to match up pretty well with the Lions. So one of the other things was their running game, I think, will help eliminate some of the pressure that our boy Patrick Mahomes dealt with last week. And they will utilize a lot of the passing attack, those shallow crosses and quick outs to get it done as well. So I got the Seahawks here. I got it at 6. It's at plus 5.5. I don't think it really matters. Anything over 4.5, I'm willing to bet on for Seattle to cover this number. And I'm willing to take them on a flyer as a money line road upset. Monday Night Football. This will be my third game. I must have missed the game here. I'll tell you what, I really need Keith back because I did miss the game, Lord. But I'll talk about it anyway. Monday Night Football, Saints at Packers. Saints at Panthers. Panthers plus 3.5, over under 40.5. I think this is a good matchup for the Saints, even though I know Derek Carr has a history of not doing well as a road favorite. I think this is a little bit of a different situation, primarily with the advantage that the Saints have at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, but also especially on the defensive side. The Saints got after Ryan Tannehill like a lot. And I don't think I don't think Bryce Young dealt with that kind of pressure in that Falcons game, and he still had two what I would consider unforced turnovers. Like they were just silly throws. And that's what you're going to deal with as a rookie quarterback. You're making throws and guys are closing in at a lot faster speed than you're used to. The safety had 2 picks, and I'm pretty sure in college that was a completed pass, or at worst, a batted ball. In the NFL, these guys are all quicker, faster, stronger, and it gets picked. I think sometimes when they ask quarterbacks the biggest difference, I think they do say like the speed in which players close in on passes. So I don't think the Panthers stand much of a chance if JC is really out too. I didn't get any news on him being out, but again, I think Derek Carr, the longer he plays, the more comfortable he'll get with his receivers. He should have a pretty decent game against the Panthers defense. I know this is their first home game. I'm not even afraid of the 3.5. So if you got it at 3.5, I think that's a reasonable number still to lay the points. I can see the Saints winning by at least a touchdown here. The other Monday Night Football game, Browns at Steelers, over under 40.5, going back to that Seahawks trend that I was talking about. Teams blown out week 1, 63%, virtually 63% cover rating in week 2. I think this game is one of the games I flagged. I think this is a perfect spot to not only back the Steelers outright, but back them on the spread. I don't think we're going to get this line over more than 2.5. I'd be surprised if it bumps up to 2.5. I think this line will look a lot like how the Browns line looked last week against the Bengals, where we'll see a steady two. Some news will come out about trends like how Pickett already has a one decent game against the Browns at home, and how the Browns have kind of a history of struggling a little bit in Pittsburgh, no matter how good or how bad Pittsburgh is, and how Deshaun Watson looked last week. I think there's reasonable concern that, it's going to be a slow start for this Browns offense. Nick Chubb is an absolute beast, but he don't run on the Steelers like he runs on the Bengals. And I think a lot of that has to do with the Steelers' commitment to stopping the run. They also have the corners to get in the face of a receiving core that I don't think is as physical as people would like them to be. Now, Christian McCaffrey ran all over the Steelers last week, and I'm here to tell you, as a Niners fan, don't worry about what the Niners do on the ground. They're a totally different scheme than what most teams will do, and it's not something that I read into a lot. If the Niners get 150 yards on you on the ground, and then the team coming in behind doesn't have as intricate of a run game as Kyle Shanahan and those guys. So I think the power game of the Browns isn't enough to muscle the Steelers. Like the Niners run game isn't based on power. It's a lot on taking advantage of numbers, running guys in motion, a little bit more intricate than what you see with like the Browns run game, which is just straight up hat on hat. And if that's the case, I think the Steelers can hold their own. Myles Garrett is going to be a problem, but I want to say there's enough experience on that line and also enough data for them to know how to negate Myles Garrett. He doesn't do to the Steelers what he does to the Bengals, and that's across the board on their defense. Like it's just something about the Steelers attack that sets them apart from the Bengals in this matchup. So I'm backing the Steelers, money line and +2. Steelers will be in my super contest. Saints will be in my super contest no matter what the number. Seahawks will be in my super contest no matter what the number. It depends on that Chiefs game. And then I'm going to put this as honorable mention, but it's technically one of my plays, and I did not write it down on the banners, unfortunately. But the Packers are traveling to the Falcons. The line was +1.5 Falcons, so the Falcons are home dog by 1.5 points. Now, I know I went on a rant about Arthur Smith in the beginning of the show. I don't like Arthur Smith. I don't. But I also don't like the idea of Jordan Love being a road favorite when his limited history shows that the results, not necessarily his play, but the results of the games that he has been in his short career on the road the Packers haven't won those games. And this is virtually a pick 'em. It's 1 point, 1.5 points. So if you're telling me that essentially I have to pick the winner of this game, I'm going to side with the limited history and think that the Falcons will find a way to win this game because Jordan Love just doesn't have a great road record, like a straight up road record, not against the spread, just straight up. Doesn't have a good record. I also just hesitate taking the Packers because again, they're not a projected good team. I think last week was more about what the Bears can't do than what the Packers did do. And I want to say again, the Falcons are more talented. They've had some great additions on their defense. If they can get their coach to actually draw up plays for Kyle Pitts and Drake London and, the rest of their playmakers, they'll be okay. I know some people might be like, well, look at their quarterback. Again, Ritter can't be that bad, man. He's not that bad. If he is that bad, then we all should just fade the Falcons for the rest of the year. I just think you can throw the ball at least 25 times and you can actually give the ball to Pitts and Drake London and let them work. They'll need to be the aggressive offense on the ground and through play action this week. That's the Falcons. They'll need to do that in order to come out with a win. I think they've got enough though. And also, you guys will hear me say this throughout the year, just like I said last week when I looked at the Packers and Bears. If the line looks a little funny, I'm going the other way. And this line looks a little funny to me. I don't think the Packers should be favored by 1.5 points here. So my honorable mentions, Commanders at the Broncos. I put this in as an honorable mention just because I don't know the health of Jerry Jeudy. If he comes back, I really think that this line gets covered. Last I checked, the Broncos were minus 3.5, so they're road favorite by 3.5. Commanders, that game last week, I'm trying not to read too much into it. I thought that their defense wasn't fast, just looked kind of sluggish. They hit hard and they played disciplined as they can in a Del Rio defense, but I just didn't like the way they looked in preseason, and I didn't like the way they looked last week either. Dobbs didn't even know he was starting for most of the week, and then there was a report said on the actual live game cast that Dobbs didn't even know the receivers' names. So I'm like, if he doesn't know the names, he probably hasn't practiced with them much. Why are they still in this game? Not only were the Cardinals still in the game, but they were practically winning until the fourth quarter. I think the Commanders got 10 points in the fourth quarter, and that's how they ended up winning. And 7 of those points came off a bad fumble by Dobbs, I believe was how it went down. So Broncos actually didn't play that bad. If their field goal kicker makes the extra point and the field goal, literally those 4 points, they win. So I don't know if I can back Howes and the Commanders in their first road game against the Broncos team that I thought played good enough to win and just missed it. Obviously, Sean Payton should stop calling onside kicks in the first play of the game, but I think they'll get it together, and that's why I'm backing the Broncos. And in my other honorable mention game, the Chargers and Titans. Chargers are favored by 3. Titans, if I could pin a segment of watch the line, this would be the game, because if the Titans go up to 3.5, maybe even 4, I think it's a good time to jump on that. At 3 last year, the line was at 3 and the Chargers pushed. I don't know if either team is better or worse than last year, but I do know it was in Los Angeles last year, and now you're getting 3 at home, where the Titans typically are tough against the spread. So I wouldn't be totally surprised if we get an outright win by the Titans and the Chargers start 0-2, because they were a team I predicted to kind of start a little slow. Kellen Moore is still doing that thing where he just wants to be cute for no reason with his play calls, and that hurt them last week. Also, Staley is known to be a zone, like, keep everything in front of him coach. How did Tyreek Hill get so loose last week? It just didn't seem like a good solid game plan. I don't know what they were thinking. It's totally unexpected to see Tua throw for almost 500 yards. I could see the Dolphins winning, but I would have never expected that they would have allowed them that much freedom behind their deepest men, because that's just not what the Chargers do. So ground and pound will always be the Titans' philosophy. I think their defense is pretty solid. And at the end of the day, they just have a good history at home. So I'm leaning to the Titans as a game that I would plug and play if I don't get a line that I like on my other games. And then the Ravens at the Bengals. I talked about dogs in Seattle and the Steelers. Now I'm talking about a favorite, which is kind of odd, but the Bengals got absolutely embarrassed week 1. If it wasn't for the Giants losing 40-0, then everybody would be talking about how the Bengals looked, especially after they paid $275 million to Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow earned that money. I just want to get that out there right now. It doesn't really matter. In my mind, it doesn't matter this one game. And people say it all the time. I hear it all the time. You can't lose your season in week 1. You can't. But you definitely don't want to come in against a divisional opponent and look that bad. The weather wasn't that bad. That 3 points just didn't look good. So with that being said, I think this is a good spot to back the Bengals. I think the public's going to overreact a little because they're going to be afraid that Joe Burrow it's going to take him some time to get back because, he didn't have a preseason and all these other excuses that people come up with. I'm not buying any of that. He doesn't have good history against the Browns. And he probably did need to get a game in under his feet before we see the old Joe Burrow. And I think this team has a little chip on their shoulder generally anyway, because no matter what they do, they're still not better than the Chiefs. And so I think their expectations this year is that they should be winning this division, and they're going to come out focused and motivated to put it to the Ravens, who I don't think can slow them down. I'd be surprised if we don't see at least 28 plus by the Bengals this week. And with that being said, I don't like Lamar Jackson in this offense in the limited sample size that I've seen. Think it's a bounce back spot. You're laying 3.5 right now with the Bengals. I'm not afraid of it. If I'm not putting it in a super contest, I would buy that hook down to 3. I will tell you that. I will buy the hook down to 3 on that game. But if I'm having to switch it out for a super contest, sure. And honestly, if you watch the line long enough, you probably will get it to tease down to 3 at some point, because I think the public is higher on the Baltimore Ravens right now getting the points. And then you'll probably see people push it back up to 3.5. So I think the sharp play here would be the Bengals. I'm siding with the Bengals. And with that is our show this week. I'm sorry that it went a little bit over just because I had to recap last week. I'll try to be a little quicker next time. But as a reminder, my disclaimer for folks, anytime you have a really amazing week in the NFL, be mindful that what it gives, it also takes, okay? Not saying to be negative or come in doubting yourself, but don't think that every week you're going to go 5-0. Cap the games like you cap them. Don't change up anything that you do. I'm still going to do my 3 dogs and 2 favorites. If your strategy is to take the team that has the feline mascots, take the team with the feline mascots week 2 too. Don't change up your strategy. Do what you do, stay focused, and take it week by week. So we are out of week 1. I'm in week 2. I'm 0-0. That's what I'm telling myself. I'm 0-0. I'm not 5-0. So you guys should do the same. Good luck to you. Again, check out the Discord if you're not there yet. If you haven't signed up, by all means, take advantage of that 10%. Join the betting Discord. You can fade all my college picks and win a lot of money on Saturdays, and you can back me on Sundays and make a lot of money. So I will catch you guys next week for week 3.